Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Veronia, and in today's video I have got a special guest who doesn't necessarily want to introduce himself, but this is Yinka, my husband.
Y'all know me already.
Okay, so in today's video I thought it would be a good fun kind of little chit chat video on money and relationships, especially because it is now a year since we have been legally married, and so I think we wanted to just talk about our experiences with dealing with personal finances when you're in a relationship, if you've got like a long-term partner or if you've got a spouse. So in this video what I want to talk about is our learnings. What are the good things about, you know, the way we've been dealing with our finances? What are maybe the not so great things, and any other learnings? So yeah, I think sit tight and we will just have a chat. So let's talk about the good things when it comes to dealing money when you're in a relationship. And just for context, we ended up joining, so combining our finances once we got married. We actually opened a joint account just before we got married, and then once we got married we kind of combined everything. Then we actually did a video a year ago talking about us joining finances, and that was literally at the start. So now that it's been a year, I think I want to talk about, you know, the lessons that we've learned. So one of the good things that I think that we've been able to learn with joining our finances is being transparent. So Yinka, do you want to maybe talk about transparency and how it's maybe helped us when it comes to our finances?
One thing is that we don't have many money arguments, because we both know how much we're bringing in. We both have an idea of where the money is going and how it's being spent, except for our personal use money. But yeah, so in that regard we don't really have arguments because of money. I mean, there's arguments because of different things, you know.
Yeah,
leaving the toilet seat down.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing, because obviously, you know, you hear that money is one of the leading causes of divorce, you know, after things like infidelity. And so I think for us it was really important to just kind of deal with that head on, and I don't think necessarily many couples tend to do that. So for us, I think it's been interesting in that I don't think we've really had any arguments when it comes to money. We've definitely had arguments when it comes to other things, but not had many arguments when it comes to money.
No.
Okay, so the second good thing I think when it comes to dealing with money in relationships is, well, I think what we've been able to do well is that we have a kind of set goal together. And so that's helped us budget appropriately together. And I think it's been interesting in that you don't necessarily tend to do the budget at first, but I do see that you will like track our spending sometimes, like you'll have a look at Monzo. And obviously, even though I'm like the budget person, what I tend to do is I will like propose the budget first, and then I'll show Yinka and then ask him, does he agree with it? Is there anything that he wants to change? And so I think that's been useful.
I don't mind. Like, yeah. Whenever you want to show me the budget, I'm just like, it's the same every month, so
it's not completely the same. Sometimes there are different things.
Yeah, I get you. But yeah, the budget's been helpful, of course, just to know that money's going to this particular place. And yeah, having a set goal as well is also good, because it means our savings go to what we're saving towards, and all the other money can go to all the other essentials and necessities, as well as our own personal spending. So yeah, and I think because we have that set goal, I think it's been a bit easier because there's no his and her money. So as soon as our money kind of goes into that pot, it's now distributed into like savings, investments. Obviously we have our own investment accounts, and we'll talk about investing in later on in the video. It's funny when you say his and hers money. I mean, when this one left her job, I was like, she wants to be claiming my fees now. Yeah. But, no, I'm playing. It's exactly that. It's not his and hers money. It's our money, regardless. So whether I'm earning more at the moment or she's earning more at the moment, then it doesn't really matter, because the money is going to be distributed in a particular way.
Yeah, and if you're liking this video so far, then feel free to give us a thumbs up, as it really does help to support the channel. Plus, I'm sure you know,
it's free.
So this brings me on to my next point. So when we're talking about, money and relationships, I think it's very important to be transparent, but I think because we joined our finances as well, I've been able to be a lot more vulnerable, especially because there was a period where I quit my job and I didn't have a lot of money coming in. And so we were really relying on your income. And I think for me, it was difficult. Like I had a lot of mind drama, especially because I was like, oh, I'm not really contributing. I don't like this. But it was also quite a good test, because if something like that happens in the future, let's say if we start a family and I have to go on maternity leave doesn't pay that much, would we be able to handle that? And how comfortable would I be with basically kind of just having you as the main breadwinner? So I think that was a good test, but it also came with quite, challenges with things like me quitting my job. I don't know if you had any learnings with that.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, obviously we weren't able to save as much. I think that was the main thing. So we weren't able to save as much towards our goals, which is in itself a bit frustrating. But I understood the situation. Ran was very stressed with her job, and doing all the YouTube and business stuff alongside that meant that it was taking a toll on her. So for me as a guy, as a man in this relationship, it was I knew I just needed to kind of hold down the fort for a while. So to be honest, it was a good opportunity for me. It made me have to apply for better paying jobs, and I got a job that pays better. So my money alone we could live off of my money alone if we had to. But also the safety net of having an emergency fund as well is great, to have 12 months of expenses pretty much there if I was made redundant as well and Rand couldn't get a job. It's good to have those things. But yeah, you quitting your job, I mean you've been talking about it for a while, so it wasn't like a big surprise. But the fact that okay, cool, when payday comes, there's only my money coming in was something to get used to. But
it was weird.
It was good.
Yeah. So any other key lessons or learnings that you've maybe had when it comes to, money and relationships?
Yeah, I think just figuring out what's important for you in terms of, I know we talk about paying yourself first, but also after that, where in terms of priorities, where do you want your money to go? I think for both of us, our giving is important. So giving in terms of tithes to church has always been a staple for us. So even when we went down to one household income, that still stayed the same. But also giving to different charities and family back home has always been something that we'd always wanted to do. So that has never changed, and I think that has served us well going into the future.
Yeah, and I think just us having the conversation about it was key, especially if, let's say, I remember there was a time where you wanted to start giving to your family, which we do now monthly, but we obviously had the conversation. But so I think it's obviously communication is very important, and I think even when we first joined our finances, I also had to let you know that like I give a certain amount to my family as well, and you were okay with that. So it's almost just communicating well and just making sure that there's no kind of resentment, especially when it comes to giving. We don't, I mean, do you want to talk about lending money to family members? Because that's also another thing that I think...
Before we go on to that, I think in terms of what you're saying, in terms of the conversation about giving, I think that goes back to the his and hers money. Because if it became a situation like that, and it would feel, from my point of view, it would feel like, okay, Ron's not working anymore, so it's my money.
Yeah.
So now she's asking me to give to all these
my
other
family.
people and give money for her stuff. Then it becomes a little bit of an issue. Yeah. But what was you saying?
So I want
lending.
Yeah, I want to talk about lending.
For me, for my personal standpoint, and where kind of like I go with lending to family, to friends and stuff like that, it depends on the person. First and foremost, like it depends on the type of person you're lending to. If you know that person, if you're gonna get your money back straight away, or it's gonna take a bit of time. For me, when I'm lending out money, it's gotta be, I don't expect it back anytime soon. I don't want to be the person that's pressuring you to get money back. So it's got to be an amount that I'm comfortable with giving first and foremost, and then I've got to be comfortable with that money not being there for a certain amount of time. So me personally with lending, I have no issues with it, but again, it's conversations that we've had to have, and we've had these conversations before where we've lended money to people and it wasn't a big deal. So.
Yeah, because I think, well, I get to the point now where I'm kind of very similar to you, where it's like, well, if we lend money to a person, we may not get that back anytime soon. So it's almost like you feel like you've just gifted the person, like you're not expecting it within the next month or 2 months, but
maybe even at all.
Yeah, or even at all. Like it's almost like a gift, and if we do get it back, then that's a bonus. But I think what you mentioned is that, you know, we will only lend money that we know that we can just give, that we wouldn't mind not getting back. Like I think that's our kind of stance with lending, and that's how we've been able to navigate that, especially, you know, when it comes to, you know, like family members or anything like that. Okay, so now I want to talk a bit more about maybe the challenges we've had during our first year dealing with finances. I think one we've already mentioned is just the challenge of when I didn't necessarily have an income coming in, and I think that was just, it was very interesting to adjust to. I didn't necessarily know from your point of view that maybe you had did you feel pressured?
What do you mean?
Like when it was just kind of your income that we were relying on?
No, I think so. When you quit your job, I was covering in a secondment and it was coming to an end. So I was already earning a higher amount. But then that secondment was coming to an end, which meant that I was going back to my lower paying role. So if I stayed in there, then we would have had more of a problem. But thankfully...
I mean, not problem per se, because we had like a year's worth of expenses.
But like in terms of the money coming in compared to the money going out, it would have been a problem. But thankfully I was able to... secure another job quite quickly, or better paying job quite quickly, so that wasn't a big problem in that regard. And
by the way, if you're completely new to my channel, I do have videos talking about, you know, the learnings that I've had from quitting my job, why I quit my job in the first place, so make sure you do check that out. I'll make sure I link one up here for you and in the description below.
Adding on to what you were saying, another challenge was kind of choosing between investing and saving. Even before you
even before I quit
your job. So like there was a point in time where like maybe Ron was like she wanted to go down the route of saving more, whereas I wanted to...
But it was saving to invest.
Yeah, saving to invest, but I wanted to... So Ron wanted to go down the route of saving to invest in property, for example. So but I wanted to invest in the stock market or some cryptos or something like that, and then choosing between the two. So yeah, that was a bit of an issue to sort through. I think at one point we got to a stage where we just thought, let's take our savings and invest it, because the markets were quite low in that regard, and we decided to do that with quite a lot of our savings. But again, that's always going to be an issue of, okay, cool, the money that we have saved now, are we going to invest it, a bit of it, or are we going to save all of it to get towards that property goal? And I guess that's the market we're in at the moment.
And I think that's when, if you have a significant other, it's really important that both of you have that conversation, because we had, you know, kind of different ideas. Like you mentioned, you wanted to invest through cryptocurrencies and the stock market, and I also wanted to invest in the stock market, but I also wanted to invest in property. So I think what I'm trying to say is it's important for you to kind of communicate and navigate what you think is important for both of you, and just almost think about that key vision. I think having that vision, and you know, if you're a person of faith, really thinking, you know, what does God want us to do? What is our purpose? And then from there thinking about, okay, well, what's going to be our next steps? Because we ended up doing a bit of both, to be honest. We ended up, you know, you invested in cryptocurrency, we also invested in the stock market as well, but then you kind of felt like we should save for our own house as well, which we hadn't necessarily planned to do this year. We hadn't necessarily planned to save for this year, but I think you thought it was good for us to do that. So then we had to have that conversation again and switch over to say, okay, well, this next half of the year we then need to focus on saving up essentially. Okay, so one other, I don't want to say it's a con, but I think a challenge that we've maybe had to overcome is kind of the money conversations when it comes to spending. So the reason why I say that is because, guys, even though I am, you know, a YouTuber and I talk about money and personal finance, I am naturally a spender, okay? And Yinka is naturally a saver. So there are some times where we're having conversations and he's like, oh, like he doesn't maybe see why I would want to spend money on something. And so I think having those conversations, if one of you is a saver and one of you is a spender, it's gonna be interesting.
But I've always been the kind of person to just do it yourself. So, for example, our boiler broke down. Like, it's just stopped working. I think like a month ago. And the normal person would call the landlord and tell them the boiler's not working.
Yeah. Or if we had our own place, I would have called to pay someone to come and fix it, to be honest. And
I was just like, okay, cool, what's not happening? What's not working? I had a feeling it was something to do with the pressure, but I wasn't too sure, so I Googled it. And then Googled the model of the boiler in, how to get the pressure up. You showed me how to do it. I did it, and it works. And it was that simple, and that's the approach I do take with most things. So like, even stuff with my car, especially my old car, I fixed a lot of the stuff myself. The windshield wipers weren't working, changed the whole thing myself. Yeah.
So, whereas like if something happened to our car, I'd be like, can we go to the garage and get it sorted and just pay the money to get it sorted? Whereas you would rather actually try and figure out if you can do it yourself first, and then obviously if we couldn't, then we would have to pay.
Yeah, but like even like, so the example that one was probably going to say is in terms of like getting like a personal trainer or fitness plan. Whereas myself personally, I would just do it myself. I would go on YouTube if I wasn't sure, get some ideas from there and make a plan for myself. But it's just different people and how different and how what they value, I guess.
So I in that case I basically wanted to get a health coach, and I was willing to pay for a health coach because I felt like I needed someone to help me or see things that I couldn't see. But then we had to have the conversation because Yinka felt like, you know, well, why can't you just do it yourself?
Where's that money coming from?
And then there was like, where's the money coming from?
Is it your own personal fees?
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the conversations you have to have, is if I was to get something like a health coach, where would that money come from? Like, would I just save up for it with my personal money, or would it come from our joint account? And if it did come from our joint account, I guess what's the benefit of, you know, investing in like a health coach, for example? Or things like when we've been to Holland and Barrett and I'm like, okay, we need to get some vitamins, and you're like, I don't see the point of getting these vitamins.
Get it from the food, right?
From the food. So there's those kind of small things that can potentially add up. But it's really important to recognize, you know, who's naturally the spender, who's naturally the saver. And I think if you're naturally a spender, I think from my perspective, it's almost talking to the person to say, okay, this is why I would like to spend money on this. You know, these are the benefits. This is how it could help us. And I think that would help. Because I think you almost came round to the idea of like, well, you came round to the idea of vitamins. Buying vitamins.
Like, it's in the book. If you had the money for it, then go ahead and buy it.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't mean I'm gonna take it every day.
Yeah. Okay, so I think now I just want to talk about any maybe general advice we would give to, you know, people who are maybe recently married or sort of in long-term relationships, and if you're dealing with money within that relationship. And one thing I do want to say is, I know that it can be taboo, it can be scary talking about money, but I think that because we speak about money quite often, like I've proposed for us to have like a money day each month. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't for whatever reason, but it's for us to really just talk about, you know, what's happening in the budget, what have we done well, what are we now working towards, and that kind of helps us keep that communication, that transparency. And I think that's what's, again, helped us to really get rid of some of those arguments that you may have with money that other couples may have. So I don't know, Yinka, if there's any sort of advice you would want to give to people in relationships where they are kind of dealing with money, or it's kind of like a scary subject, or they've never done it before?
I think it's just transparency. Understand how you want your money to come together. If you want your money to come together, understand how you're going to be spending your money. Just be transparent, because these things are important. Money is what makes, well, it's very important in the world. So we're going to need it for everyday things. So you got to have these conversations. Same way you talk about your relationship in general, how many kids you want, etc. All these important decisions. Money is going to be, it has to be a part of that. Otherwise, it can lead to problems later on down the line. As Ran already said, it's one of the leading causes of divorce. So if you want to avoid that, have the conversation about money.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think especially, you know, when it comes to you maybe starting a family, there's going to be costs involved with things like that. So if you can, for me, I would personally recommend, you know, having those conversations earlier on. Obviously, if you've not had the conversation before, I would try and start, even though it may be a bit rocky. I think it was probably a bit rocky for us, but we started the conversation before we got married, which I think was quite helpful. And then when we got married, we kind of just put it all in together and then just kind of worked out the kinks. Especially if you plan on joining finances, you know, it may take a while for you to get used to it. Sometimes I'm kind of like trying to peek over at Yinka's spending money to see how much.
Got so much money left.
Because he always has so much money in his spending pot, and I'm like, we have the same amount every month.
I have to manage my peas. That's why.
You save everything, whereas I spend it.
I mean, what is there to buy nowadays, man?
Yeah, well, the other thing I would definitely say is just have that communication. I think, like you mentioned, you know, if you're talking about how many kids you want, if you're talking about other life goals, just make finances a part of that. Like, I think especially when you're married, what we will learn is that obviously, like, if you're married, you become one. And so for us, that also meant finances and, you know, managing your money. And I think if you do have those two personalities, that's okay. It's just recognizing, okay, you're a spender, I'm a saver. This is how we need to communicate if we are planning to buy something. What are our key goals? You know, what are we working towards? And make sure your budget is reflecting on that, so that every single month, if you are then re-looking at the budget or you're thinking about spending something, you're kind of going back to those original goals to say, actually, are we still working towards our goals? And if not, then maybe we need to, you know, reevaluate or anything. And if you do feel like maybe you need help when it comes to managing your money, dealing with finances, I actually do work with clients who now have better conversations and relationships with their partners when it comes to money. So make sure you do check out my one-on-one coaching if you're interested in that. You can book a free call with me. I'll link more information up here for you and in the description below. So I think that's probably all we wanted to say. Yinka, thank you so much for being my special guest.
You're welcome.
Any last words to my lovely audience, my subscribers? If you are subscribed to my channel, I hope you are.
Subscribe, innit?
So if you did like this video, then please do give me a thumbs up if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments, what do you think about money and relationships? Do you talk to your partner about it? If you do have a partner, let us know. I do post every Tuesday, so if you would like to know more, then of course you can subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys next Tuesday.